So if I could ask Aras Labutis, Head of Urban Transformation, Coronation Property, Patrick Lauren, Managing Director, Origination, Plenary, Ned Mannoun, Mayor, City of Liverpool, Princess Ventura, Regional Director for New South Wales, Urbis, and Provocateur Kim Curtin, Partner Infrastructure and Project Solutions to Deloitte, to join me on stage for the most energetic, engaged room you will ever see.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do our best to keep the energy going, so no pressure on all of you. So we're sort of covering infrastructure generally, so we've had a bit of conversation today about housing, about transport. Hopefully, I'm sure we'll touch on that during this session, but hopefully we'll touch broader infrastructure. So I think to kick off, it'd be good to hear from each of you. What do you see as the number one priority for infrastructure investment and delivery within Western Sydney over the next sort of short to medium term, say 3 to 5 years? Aras, we'll go to you at the end.
Kick it off. Look, I think it's critical we keep doing what's been happening recently, transport infrastructure, continuing to deliver road infrastructure, but most importantly, and this is what supports the delivery of housing as well, continue to deliver or start to deliver some really good amenity for the residents of Western Sydney, and I think that's probably where there's a little bit of a shortfall or some inequity between the Eastern City and the Western City, and that's everything from active open space, but all the way down through to just usable space that people can just hang out with their families and catch up informally and that sort of thing, but it just improves the quality of life and it also supports quality housing.
Hey, thanks, Kim. Look, I think for mine there's two priorities in infrastructure, and I think Aras has absolutely got it right around the need to be balancing infrastructure with housing and amenity. You know, we've got a housing crisis, but you know, we can't just pivot completely to housing without bringing along the infrastructure and amenity that's needed to support the new communities as we build them. The other thing that, and we're seeing it this week with the Commonwealth's report yesterday, it's got to be about getting value for money back into infrastructure. So not just doing infrastructure for infrastructure's sake, but around, you know, being more sensible and targeting the real projects, but also looking at the procurement methods and the delivery in terms of getting value for money. Because every $1 billion that a big project or a pipeline goes over, that's one or two less hospitals, that's 10 less schools that are getting developed. So I think, you know, the message, the Commonwealth was quite clear yesterday, we've got to find ways to get value for money back into infrastructure.
I think we have to ask ourselves a question before that, and it's what sort of life do we want the people of Western and Southwest Sydney to live? What does it look like? So, for example, is Western Sydney somewhere where you just sleep and you leave to go to work and then you come back to go to work, that you leave to go watch a football game and then come back? So if Western Sydney is just about somewhere to sleep, then you design your infrastructure accordingly, i.e., let's build as many lanes on the M5 as possible. Let's eventually get a train line, you know, there, that were ones that we cancelled, because we need people to leave the area. Same for amenity. If you want to go and enjoy some beautiful open space, you go past the Georges River, which we've been working on for many, many years, but can't get $1 for it, and we have to go to the eastern suburbs. So from that point of view, it's infrastructure to leave the area. If we want to build proper communities, the 30-minute city, then we'd work out, well, one, how do we good quality housing with good amenity? So we'd fund the river walkways, the connections from Liverpool Station down to the Georges River. We would look at not putting a roof or a facility in, where was it, Moore Park they talked about the other day, because Moore Park needs more stuff for all their population growth. You would build a multi-use facility in the Southwest Sydney where 20,000 people are moving to. You would also look at your policy settings and how do you create more employment high order employment to match the skill set of the people moving into the Southwest in city centers. Like they do in America, you'd be incentivized to open up in certain areas. So I know this is not a hard infrastructure, call it a soft infrastructure motivation thing, where say, well, why, if you want to open up a business in say, Liverpool CBD, Penrith CBD, Campbelltown CBD, that you would have a payroll tax exemption for opening up that area, which would then build commercial towers and lead on to so on and so forth. So I think we need to go back to what sort of life do we want people in Western Sydney and Southwest Sydney to live?
For me, the next priority has to be about maximizing the catalytic impact of the infrastructure that we're putting across Western Sydney. We heard, and I agree with, the need for more amenities around transport. There's also the need to focus on safety, especially after dark, particularly for women and girls, because that will then promote their utilization as well. I think because the infrastructure that we have put in place and we're planning to put in place have the real potential to have a catalytic impact, not just in delivering housing, but also on productivity improvements, on how we move across the city, about putting the right labor, the best placed labor to a particular job, equity, improved equity outcomes, livability outcomes, and then economic prosperity as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, Ned, coming back to you for a minute. So there's a lot of great development that's been happening in Liverpool, but if you think broadly across the whole of Western Sydney, what do you think is the key that we need to be doing in city centres? And referring back to Jennifer's comments earlier, that we don't want the Aerotropolis to just be sucking resources out of all of our sort of current city centres. What do you think we need to be doing within each of the city centres to really drive the place that people want to live, but as well as to work and to develop the skills that we need?
Yeah, so I think we need to give every city centre a purpose. What is Penrith's purpose? What is Parramatta's? Parramatta has taken off. It's 10 years ago we were sitting here. We know where Parramatta was and to where it is today. It should actually give everyone confidence of what can actually happen. What is Liverpool's purpose? What is Campbelltown's purpose? Because if you can identify purpose, then you can attract the appropriate industry. We've seen Western Sydney University over the last decade acknowledge that it was in the wrong locations. The suburban campuses, they broke up that model and they moved into city centres. And then you can imagine if they're going to move an engineering faculty into an area, let's say Liverpool. Liverpool has the Moorebank Intermodal full of robotics galore, and then it has the airport with all the Aerotropolis and all that industry. It is going to be the head of robotics. So then it would make sense of, let's make that an engineering hub. Because if we do that and then we mix that with ambition, ambition then could make us a global leader. We are a global city. We are one of the only global cities around the world that's building a new international airport, but it seems that we're lacking ambition. Probably the biggest mistake the previous state government did, and I think they did a much of an amazing job when it got to infrastructure, is two things they messed up on. They messed up the whole planning system. They changed the plan for growing Sydney, which had Penrith have a place, Liverpool a place, and Campbelltown a place, to the three cities, those nice sort of light colours on the map, the east, then the central city, and then that. Because my people really travel from Campbelltown to Liverpool and all the way up to the Hawkesbury. There was completely no community of interest in between them. But that's our strategy now. So we've actually said, you know what? We don't want Liverpool nor Penrith to prosper because we want to go and take all the money out and put it into Aerotropolis. Which really, Aerotropolis, as anyone who's built cities or has had a role in it, would say it is going to take a massively long time to actually get any impact. So I think we need to go back and scrap those in. But the other second thing that they did was Tech Central. Why would you put Tech Central in Central, right? Because it's not central. It's actually the worst place to get to. If you think about it, yeah, great, all the train lines, but it's not near the population. Look what America does. If you look at where the tech companies are, they're in the middle of the bush because they go out there and anchor industries. So I think we need to shift our mindset, lift our ambition, and define purpose for these areas, and then build accordingly. We focus on government moving jobs out there, but where is the corporate sector? Right? Where is corporates who are saying, we're going to move out here? Where are they going to bring the high-quality jobs out into the West, not just the back-end, low-order jobs? So I think corporate Australia has to be sitting around the table and saying, yeah, we want to bring some of these jobs. Now, it might not be, it shouldn't have to be the typical model of, I'm going to go lease 500 square meters or 1,000 square meters and fit it out. the WeWorks, the smart work hubs, whatever it is. I think we need to be working on more of that. And I know the state government was looking previously at sort of anchoring these sort of smart work hubs, but I think, if we had one in Liverpool, then people could say, okay, well, yeah, we can come along, Urbis could have an office there, you guys do plenty of work in our area anyway, so, right? But I think that's what we need to do.
So, Princess, one of the questions that's coming through is, are there any lessons learned from previous urban developments, especially in terms of balancing and managing growth and infrastructure delivery that we can take?
Well, I think there are many lessons. One is about partnership, that if we really want to maximize impact and outcomes, that requires more than one stakeholder. It requires all the landowners within a particular precinct, so private sector. It requires the for-purpose sector, particularly now that affordable housing is a key issue for us, and partnership with government and the different agencies required to really deliver holistic outcomes for a precinct, I think is really one lesson. A second lesson is really the importance of a shared vision and measure of what success looks like. I think that's one that I know the Transport for New South Wales has just released grant funding for community improvement districts. Certainly, when you look around the world, there are over 2,000 improvement districts around the world. And we just had our first one in Australia, actually. Sydney Waterfront Co. is a pilot of that. And I understand Transport for New South Wales is looking to encourage more of that. That's certainly something that would really be a useful tool for partnership, for governance, as well as funding that are more precinct and citywide outcomes.
So, Patrick, what's the role of the private sector here? And also thinking from the perspective of, Plenary is known for your mega projects. So, in the absence of another mega project, what role does the private sector play, and what role does Plenary play in providing sort of increased connectivity within Western Sydney and developing infrastructure?
Yep. Well, I think the private sector brings a couple of things which, is coming more in short supply at the moment. One's expertise, because, the government is stretched and everyone's sort of stretched at the moment. So leveraging on the expertise in the private sector is important. And obviously sort of capital as well. So, we all know that the days of free money are over, so putting that hard work into capital is important. I guess what we sort of do, and when we look at the, delivering infrastructure is we're not just wanting to do, one piece of the puzzle. We're wanting to solve the whole picture, as it were. So when we look at a hospital or something to do with entertainment and entertainment precincts, such as some of our convention centres, we come and look at the whole thing and go, yes, great, there's a core asset there, but there's also opportunity around building it as well, around building the ancillary services, around building the services that the staff need for staff welfare, so childcare, etc., key worker housing, safe places for women, etc., so making sure that they can get back, don't have long distances and dark to sort of travel. So we're really interested in the whole ecosystem and making it work from day one. I couldn't tell you the number of, sort of market soundings I go when someone turns up to me and goes, oh, we've built the hospital 10 years ago, no one's turned up, so now can you, do you want to come and do a very risky asset? And it's like, no, if you'd got us involved earlier, we'd have taken that mix, we'd have taken the, that mix of the low risk asset, the medium risk asset and the high risk asset, we would have blended all together and made it happen. But coming along and trying to do a piecemeal approach is very difficult, but come talk to us early. We've got the money and the expertise to make the whole precinct sing, whether it's health or entertainment or other.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Aras, going to you, Coronation's been, currently building Sydney's largest build-to-rent project, and you've been looking around the world at other sort of build-to-rent projects around the world. What are the lessons learned, and what can we sort of take out of that in terms of how we proceed forward more build-to-rent within Sydney?
Look, I think build-to-rent's obviously a fairly new asset class in Australia, and there's been a lot of talk about it, and we're almost finished 2 projects actually. So one of those is the largest, or will be the largest in Sydney. That's in Marylands. It's called Mason and Main. And I think looking at examples around the world, it's about providing, I guess, enhanced levels of amenity for the residents. And it's also a bit of a security of tenure as well, because I think everyone's probably had that horror story of a rental where things don't get fixed for months, and or you get kicked out because the landlord decides that they want to move their son or daughter in, or something of that nature. So it's probably about giving power back to the renter, and we're looking at a range of different things that will work in the background of the infrastructure behind the actual management itself, that will allow people to be able to find the property online, sign up, get their key to actually access the property, all within about 20 minutes. And then obviously when you're in the ecosystem as well, it's about having flexibility with the different product sizes. So for example, you might decide that you need one more bedroom or one less bedroom, and you can do that without breaking a lease. Or you might decide that you want to move to a different location. You might get a job in a different area, and one of the Coronation projects will be close to that new place of employment, and you're able to shift over again within that ecosystem without break fees, and just really making it easy for that renter.
Yeah, great. So this morning, Kirsten Fishburn was saying she wants to see super funds getting involved in build to rent. Is that the answer? Is that what we need?
I just missed that first part of the question, sorry.
Kirsten Fishburn this morning was talking about, or she did a call out for super funds to get involved in funding build to rent.
Look,
is that what we need?
There's obviously a lot of super money around in Australia. We're as I understand it, the second largest amount of super in the world, just behind Canada. There's a huge amount of opportunity for super funds to be involved in that, and I think there's obviously institutional attention on the sector, and I think it'll continue to grow there. There's also obviously a lot of opportunity for super funds to get involved in infrastructure, in my view, as well. A lot of other countries around the world do infrastructure a little bit differently. They fund it differently, particularly the US, and it is sort of a long-term, stable investment as well. So I think there's other opportunities for super to look into that kind of enabling infrastructure also. But they will definitely play a big role, probably in completed assets in the first instance for BTR, but potentially down the track, the likes of Cbus and that type of thing that deliver their own product, they'll also have that part to play too.
Ned, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yes. I reckon if my parents told me, Ned, you know what, when I was 19, 20 years old, that go get a job, move out of home, and rent for the rest of your life, and you'll be right. I think I'd be in a much different position financially now than I am. And I really think while build to rent has a role to play in this, we talk about housing affordability, but we lose sight of the actual problem. At the moment, ultimately, capital needs to go somewhere. We're talking about superannuation capital, or we're talking about private sector capital. If we look at Moore Point, I'll use it as an example. Moore Point is next to Liverpool train station. It's two land ownership. So when you look at development, you look at the fragmentation. There's no point zoning land if you have to play Monopoly with 10 people to amalgamate it to build, and one person holds out. So you can zone as much as you want, but if the land subdivision pattern is not appropriate, you aren't going to get outcomes. That's number one. So number two, this one has two ownership of 30 hectares?
32.
32 hectares on a train station. Just needs a little bridge, and there's already pylons. The Germans built the pylons as part of interns in World War I, so the pylons are there. The train station allowed for this. So a little bridge, you have water all around this. So amenity-wise, it has the best amenity in Western Sydney, dare I say. It was identified in the plan for growing Sydney. I don't know when the plan for growing Sydney was done, in 2000 and something, 4 or 5, 6, something like that. So it was identified there. 2015, I put a mayoral minute up saying, let's make it happen. We're in 2023, and we've just moved on from Gateway. So what I'm getting at is that what is the problem? Stock. At the moment, if it takes a developer 5 years to develop, then nothing is going to happen, whether it's built to rent or not. It doesn't matter who's behind it. So I think that we need to be careful of getting caught up in nice things that sound good, but in reality is, if we still have issues with land fragmentations, the construction costs are rising, Developers can't get the uplift because they're evil people to talk to, and you can't go near a near a developer these days. We saw Ed Square. I don't know if anyone here has been to Ed Square. Ed Square is an amazing outcome delivered by Frasers. Transport-oriented development on a train station. One significant owner, it was Landcom at the time. They sold it to Frasers. But Frasers, I think they went for 3 or 4 extra uplifts on that land. Built a great shopping center, great residential community. So, and it wasn't built to rent. They've sold those on there, and it's a great thing. So I think built to rent maybe play one role in it, but I have issues because I want to make sure that young Australians can actually own their property and build capital and equity for themselves.
So another question that's come in, and I think I can guess who's put it in there too. What's the priority for extending the metro? Should it be south from the airport, north from Mary's, or something else? And the answer can't be everything. Before we go there, anyone want to pick this one up?
Yes.
Not everything.
Who's here? Who's taking 20,000 people a year into the area for the next 20 years? Anyone? Right? We are. At the moment, we are the closest people to the airport, our community, but we don't even have a road that goes to the airport. That's the reality, let alone transporting. So we have, yes, St. Mary's going down, tick, right, that's happening. But then to not continue that into the Southwest Growth Centre, it's lunacy. You know, we've got to, at a bare minimum, connect it. You've got to metrify it from Leppington through Grenfell, and at least through to Liverpool as a city centre. That was discussed during the state election, which was really positive, but now we've even scrapped that feasibility. Because I don't know about you now, but literally our community is hitting gridlock. But yet the problem is, different from other communities, there are 400 people a week moving in there. So I think that if you want growth, it should be done in the southwest.
I'm happy to pick this up because I'm actually delivering with others the metro out there. So we will be creating those high-value jobs for you there, Ned, in terms of operating driverless trains, maintaining them, etc. And so I'm very technical. Look, I can't say. I'm not going to pick one because I see Peter Regan's joined and I don't want to say anything opposite to my client. But I would say that Peter drove a very, very hard bargain during the procurement and award, and he's got a contract that makes it very easy for him to extend. So when he does make a selection, take into account Ned's views, and I'm sure demographers and others like Princess might have a view on north or south, but it'll be very easy for him to extend it. And that's what Western Sydney Airport needs is more public transport. I think there was a study recently, the 8 LGAs in Western Sydney are all in the bottom third of public transport accessibility across the state. So it's really a need that I hope isn't forgotten in this relook at the infra pipeline, is the need for more public transport in Western Sydney, north or south.
So, Princess, how do we ensure that these mini metropolis, the question says, maintain a sense of community?
That we look at urban design outcomes that are people-centric. Density, scale, that they're of human scale, those things I think needs to still occur in that equation. There's a lot of big spaces, and we need to think about the spaces in between those. Is really a starting point, which means if you go from that perspective, you need to think about magnetic places. What do they have, right? Things that are not too manicured, things that have trees, greenery, diversity of uses, just the things that I think that are inherent in cities that we love to visit and live in.
Yeah. So, Aras, what do you look for when you're looking for what is a space that you're going to put the next build-to-rent project, for example? What are you looking for in the local area?
So we're always looking for more of a precinct, not necessarily a single building, and that just gives us the opportunity to do some placemaking. It's that public domain outcome. It's how it all ties together. And I think that's when you really get the opportunity to activate a space. So, looking at our paper mill precinct in Liverpool, for example, that's completed now, the F&B component of that, which is in the old paper mill itself, really forms the beating heart of that community, and people are really proud of it. So, one of the residents that lives there said, well, now my friends from Newtown are coming to visit me because I've got this on my doorstep. So I'm not just going to them all the time anymore. So it's creating outcomes like that are really important, and I think that comes about when you can deliver that sort of semi-public, semi-private area that really engages the community, whether they live there, visit there, or work there.
So one of the questions that we were given as a panel as well was around the north-south connectivity conundrum, I think it was said. So do you have any particular thoughts, anyone on the panel around, and there's a few questions here around the growth corridors. How does that address the need for social housing? How do we stimulate economic growth through the growth corridors? Throwing it open.
I'll just jump in really quickly. I think the growth corridors is one thing, but I think we've got a lot of existing infrastructure in Western Sydney that we can lean on first, because that's the low-cost opportunity, right? Because you've already got that infrastructure in place, you've got transport in place, there are services and facilities and amenity there that, and probably with just a little bit of investment, will create a lot of impact and outcome. So it's a combination of both, I would say, but we have to be careful not to throw out those existing areas and just focus on new ones. I think we've got to, particularly with some of these pretty big housing targets that we're facing over the next 5 years, really need to look at those areas that can generate housing supply and jobs immediately, rather than down the track, because it does take a long time to bring precincts and areas to fruition.
On that first question about what about social infrastructure, does private capital have a role to play in building hospitals, schools and social housing? So I'll just give you two real life examples. Across the road from Liverpool Hospital, literally across from it, it's a strategy we've worked on a long time to get a private hospital connected in by bridge into Liverpool Hospital. And currently zoned for it. What happened is we finally have someone who, lucky enough, an old Italian builder who just built a bunch of units but never sold them. So he did some build to rent. It worked out well. Now he's saying, I'm going to build this new private hospital. Fantastic. But he said, we need more density because there's actually such a great demand. Now it's stuck with the Department of Planning because of flooding. So just put this in perspective. They're asking for extra height, and the Department of Planning is saying, what about the flooding there? But the flooding there is the same exactly as your hospital, which you're currently spending $700 million on. So there's $250 million that's tied up and it's been there for years. Rather than say, tick, let's move on, we're talking about something that should be considered as part of this. And when I say flooding, we're talking about the PMF flood when NOAA turns up. Go to Austral, we have a school that's ranked number 23 in the state in the HSC, a private school. They beat King's. They only charge $2,200 a year though, so a little bit different. So this school has a massive demand on it, and they went and bought land that's in Austral that's zoned as infrastructure. So it's not R2 land, it's actually yellow land that says a school is going here. The state government says we don't want that land, you can buy it. They want to build a $230 million private school there to deal with all the growth in the area, and it's been around with the Department of Planning as an SSD for probably close to 2 years now. So when the private sector does want to do something, they're being held up. So, and I think, once again, yeah, it's confusing.
There certainly is a lot of money in infrastructure, in social infrastructure that can be unlocked. There are a number of those stories, including one that I can share because it was in the public domain on the unsolicited proposal pathway in Norwest that we were working with Dexus on, when there's a real need for a high school in Norwest, but that just didn't go through the unsolicited proposal pathway. There is an impossible requirement there on uniqueness that I have yet to see anyone be able to, jump that uniqueness clause and requirement.
Okay, well, let's right at the end, so really quickly from each of you, in 10 words or less, what's your one wish? If we could grant you a wish today of something that you would change or have happen, what would it be? Who's ready? Aras, are you ready?
The end of the current review process in New South Wales Government.
Okay. Aras?
Quick approvals.
Ned?
Fast train from Liverpool to Bankstown when the metro opens in 2 years.
And Princess?
A workable mechanism for so that we can leverage private capital to deliver social and other infrastructure.
Excellent. Please join me in thanking the panel.